Hey cyber family, so I kind of wanted to come on and address something really quick because I keep seeing these comments over and over and over again, and it's very confusing to me, and I don't understand what people don't get. But I can kind of understand where they're coming from, and I'll tell you why. The comments that I keep seeing is you keep spreading racism to your children. If you don't talk about it, then they won't know about it. Stop beating a dead horse. Don't teach your children about racism. Don't tell your children about racism. If you're constantly talking about race and constantly talking about racism, then that's putting thoughts into your children's minds. You just need to stop talking about it altogether, and you just need to teach them that it's one race and it's human race, and and not to see color and just see people for who they are, and you don't have to continue the rhetoric of race, because if you keep talking about it, then of course they're going to feel some type of way about it. So, now I just really want to tell you guys how naive and ignorant that way of thinking is, because I was in that very same mindset a few years ago. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I had never really up front dealt with, racism. When I was in the 5th grade, that was the first time I had ever experienced being called the N-word. It was not something that my parents talked about a lot. They never really talked about hatred of this color or that color, or we never really talked about a lot of race in our household. I stayed in a predominantly white city. I went to a predominantly white school from the time I was in kindergarten until the time I graduated high school. I was sometimes the only black child in my classroom. I was surrounded by a lot of people that did not look like me, and never had an issue. Never really had an issue. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and I guess that was time, that was during the time where people was trying to kumbaya and come together or whatever. I don't know if I was living under a rock or whatever the case may have been, but I know that my parents experienced racism against them. My grandparents experienced racism against them. But it was not until I got into the foster care system where I started experiencing racism the most. And the reason why I say I was naive in my thinking, because I waltzed up into a cultural diversity training that we are required to take as foster parents. Me and my husband, the only 2 African American people in there at the time, with a white child as a placement in our care, amongst other foster families who happen to be Caucasian. And 80% of the class that were Caucasian had African American placements or a child of color as a placement. They got to talking about their stories, and then I shared mine. Now, at the time, I hadn't talked to my children. I hadn't talked to my biracial children. I haven't talked to my black child who's experienced racism herself, about just downright what racism is. And that was my own fault. That was a mistake that I made, and a mistake that I can't afford to make again, because it's very costly. Those type of mistakes are very costly, and I can recognize that it was a mistake for me not to talk to my children about racism. That is a mistake, and here's why. We were talking, and they got to me, and I said, oh, okay, well, I was sharing my story. And like I said, at the time, I had gone to another state. We had just came back from another state, and I live in North Carolina. We had just came back from Tennessee, where a woman accused me of kidnapping my child. I was just trying to get him some pictures taken. Had the police called on me. This was during the time that I experienced police being called on me almost every day. When my white son was an infant, where we had been held up in restaurants, people refusing to let us leave because they thought that we kidnapped our son. Well, we would go to a restaurant, and people are so fond of babies, and they always want to look, oh, such a cute baby. And then when they look over and see that he's white, are you the nanny? You kidnapped that boy. I remember one time me and my son were broke down on the side of the road, and we pulled over, and as a kind gesture, I just using my manners to, what my parents taught me, I knocked on the door of the person whose house I broke down in front of, and I said, "Excuse me, sir, I'm sorry I had broke down in front of your house." He was so nice and kind. He even offered me water. "Would you like a glass of water?" I said, "No, sir. My family will be here in a minute to help me off side of the road. But the car needed a little bit more work than what we could have done." He said, "Oh, you can just leave it there. You can just leave it there, and you guys could come and get it. You can tow it later." Okay, thank you. He was so nice and so kind. Until I got a call from my husband and said, "What did you do?" And I said, "What do you mean what did I do?" He said, "It's so many police officers surrounding our vehicle." I said, "What?" "Oh, okay." The guy called and told them that I had kidnapped my child, and I was trying to get away with the white boy. And he was trying to hold me there. What? So you see, if I had not talked to my children about racism then, I sure as heck was going to talk to them about racism now. Because it has been times where my children have cried in restaurants while being harassed. So no, we can't stay silent. Because silence is deadly sometimes. So that was the mistake that I made. And again, I will never make it. I will never make that mistake again. And it didn't come purely because I did not want to talk about it. It was just because I was ignorant to the fact of how important it was to talk about it. So when I see these comments, "Oh, just don't talk to your children about race. Don't tell them." That's ignorant. Why? Because when they step out of my door, America's going to tell them about racism. Yeah. My 4 children, 2 who are biracial, 1 who's African American, and 1 who's white, they won't know a thing about hate. They didn't know a thing about hatred. Because that's not the type of people that we are, not the type of people that my family is. But the fire in somebody's eyes when they think that you have stolen a child, the words that come out of their mouth when they stand in front of the door, and then you have to get ugly. Oh, but then you're stereotyped as the typical angry black woman. And I'm just trying to defend my family. When the police officers come up on the scene and they see a white child with a black, they don't know what's going on. So who do you think they're going to believe? Well, ma'am, do you have proof? Do I have proof that this is my son? Well, sure. Let me go in the bag and pull out his foster care paperwork. So it's all good if you can just not talk about racism and race relations and it doesn't affect your family. I'm so happy for you. Because that's not a privilege that I have right now. That's not a privilege that I have. As a mother of a transracial family, that's not a privilege that I have. And I'm so glad. I am so glad because God is so awesome. It needs to be discussed. It needs to be talked about. And if you are uncomfortable with the conversation, then you're a part of the problem. Because we can have conversations about race. We can have conversations about racism. And at the end of the day, I'll still respect you. I will still respect you. So no, it's time out. It's time out for, let sleeping dogs lie. What sleeping dogs? Racism that was here before I came, that will be here when I'm gone. I would be a fool not to talk to my children about the things that they are going to. Not if, not if, but when they walk out the door at some point in their lives, when they experience racism, they'll have a foundation to stand on. And they can say, you know what, my mama taught me well. We talked about this, and they'll know how to handle it. Because honey, you was not there. You was not there. When you can see the look on your kid's face when they think you going to jail for stealing their brother. You was not there. You was not there when you had people telling, oh, he's going to grow up to be an N lover. My son has never heard the N word. He's an infant. He's never heard the N word from me. Oh, but he'll step out these doors and he'll hear it all the time. So no, I won't be quiet. I won't shut up. I won't stop talking about racism. I won't stop talking about how it affects my family. And for those of you that have so much to say about, oh, well, you chose this. You chose to adopt a white son. You shouldn't have adopted a white son. You knew the problems that it was going to come with. Well, then that just proves my point. That you just cannot, in America in 2020, adopt a child out of a foster care system because he's white and I'm black. Something is wrong with that. And if you don't see something wrong with that, then something is wrong with you. And you need a mindset change. But this is not the page. This is not the page. If you thought I was going to be silent. Because I'm not. So you can get with it or you can get gone. Because baby, it ain't going to bother me not one bit. And I'm going to still be talking about racism tomorrow with my children. Okay? So I hope you continue to have a nice day in your silenced privilege. Oh, it's just so fun that you can do that. But I can't. And I won't. Okay? Boop. Now move around. Have a great day.